The wind howled mercilessly across the plains as Katherine Anderson clutched her 6-month-old daughter closer to her chest, shivering against the bitter cold of the Arizona Territory. The year was 1887, and Catherine Kate, to those who knew her, had never felt more alone in her 22 years of life. The small fire she'd managed to build was dying, its embers glowing faintly against the encroaching darkness of the desert night. Her horse had gone lame 3 miles back, forcing her to continue on foot with little Emma bundled against her. The baby slept fitfully now, unaware of their dire circumstances or the tears that streaked her mother's dirt-smudged face. Kate had been traveling for 2 days since fleeing her brother-in-law's ranch near Prescott, carrying only what she could fit in her saddlebags: a few clothes, some hard biscuits, and the locket containing a portrait of her late husband, Thomas. The distant howl of a coyote made Kate pull Emma closer. She poked at the dying fire with a stick, but the flames had nearly surrendered to the darkness. Her eyes stung with exhaustion as she gazed up at the vast, star-filled sky. Ash Fork was still a day's journey ahead of town, where no one knew her, where she could perhaps find work and start anew. "Just hold on, little one," she whispered to her sleeping daughter. "Mama will figure something out." The sound of approaching hoofbeats made Kate's heart race. Out here, alone and vulnerable, strangers meant danger more often than salvation. She reached for the small knife she kept in her boot, the only protection she had, and held it close as the silhouette of a rider appeared on the horizon. The horseman approached slowly, the moonlight eventually revealing a tall figure atop a chestnut stallion. Kate held her breath, positioning herself between the stranger and her baby. "Evening, madam," came a deep voice, tinged with concern rather than threat. The man dismounted, keeping a respectful distance. "Mighty cold night to be out here alone." In the faint glow of the dying fire, Kate could make out a weathered face beneath a wide-brimmed hat. He appeared to be in his early 30s, with kind eyes that assessed her situation quickly. "Name's Roy Rafferty," he said, removing his hat. "I've got a small ranch about half a mile east of here." Kate clutched Emma tighter but didn't respond. Roy's eyes fell to the sleeping infant and his expression softened further. "Your baby's sleeping beside a dying fire," he said gently. "That won't do for either of you. You'll sleep under my roof tonight." "I don't know you, sir," Kate finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "No, madam, you don't," Roy agreed. "But I give you my word as a gentleman that you'll be safe. My housekeeper, Mrs. Wilkins, is at the ranch. She's a kind old soul who'd never forgive me if I left a mother and child out here to freeze." Kate hesitated, weighing her options. The fire was nearly out, the night was getting colder, and Emma needed proper shelter. She studied the cowboy's face, looking for any sign of deception, but found only genuine concern. "I'm heading to Ash Fork," she finally said. "We just need shelter until morning." Roy nodded. "Then that's what you'll have. May I?" He gestured toward her meager belongings. Kate nodded, and he gathered her saddlebags, then helped her onto his horse. With practiced ease, he mounted behind her, careful to keep a respectful distance while ensuring she and Emma were secure. "I'm Katherine Anderson," she offered as they set off. "And this is Emma." "Pleased to meet you both, Mrs. Anderson. Hold tight now." The ranch appeared as a small collection of buildings nestled against a backdrop of rugged hills. A modest main house stood alongside a barn and corral, with warm light spilling from the windows into the darkness. As they approached, an older woman appeared in the doorway, her gray hair tied back in a neat bun. "Roy Rafferty, who have you brought home this time?" she called out, her tone simultaneously scolding and affectionate. "Mrs. Wilkins, this is Mrs. Anderson and her daughter Emma," Roy explained as he helped Kate dismount. "They need shelter for the night. They're heading to Ash Fork. The older woman's face softened immediately at the sight of the baby. Well, don't just stand there in the cold. Bring them inside. The warmth of the house enveloped Kate as she stepped through the door. A fire crackled in the hearth, and the smell of fresh bread filled the air. It had been months since she'd felt this kind of comfort. "You poor dear," Mrs. Wilkins said, taking in Kate's exhausted appearance. "Let's get you and the little one settled. I'll prepare some hot food." "Thank you," Kate whispered, emotion threatening to overwhelm her. "Just for tonight." Roy caught her eye. "Stay as long as you need, Mrs. Anderson. Ash Fork isn't going anywhere." That night, Kate slept in a clean bed for the first time in days, with Emma in a makeshift cradle beside her. Despite her intention to leave at first light, exhaustion claimed her until well into the morning. When she awoke, sunlight was streaming through the curtains. Panic seized her momentarily when she didn't see Emma, but the sound of gentle cooing and Mrs. Wilkins's soft voice drifted in from the next room. Kate found them in the kitchen. Emma contentedly nestled in the older woman's arms while Roy sat at the table, drinking coffee. "Good morning," he said, standing when she entered. "Hope you slept well." "I did, thank you," Kate replied, suddenly self-conscious of her wrinkled dress and disheveled hair. "Your little one's been no trouble at all," Mrs. Wilkins assured her. "Sweetest baby I've seen in years. Here, she's probably hungry." She handed Emma back to Kate. Over breakfast, Kate found herself sharing bits of her story. How Thomas had died of fever 6 months ago, just weeks before Emma was born. How her brother-in-law, Jeremiah, had made it clear that, without Thomas, she was a burden he wasn't willing to support. "He wanted to send Emma to an orphanage," she admitted, her voice breaking. "Said a widow with no skills couldn't raise a child properly, so I left." Roy's expression darkened. "Some men lack basic decency," he said simply. "What will you do in Ash Fork?" "Find work," Kate replied. "I can sew, cook. I'll do whatever it takes to keep Emma with me." Roy and Mrs. Wilkins exchanged a glance. "Mrs. Anderson," Roy began carefully, "Ash Fork's a rough town these days. The railroads brought in all sorts, not all of them honorable. A young woman alone with a baby." He trailed off. "What Mr. Rafferty is trying to say," Mrs. Wilkins interjected, "is that we could use help here. I'm not getting any younger, and this place could benefit from a woman's touch beyond my aging hands." Kate looked between them, suspicion rising. "I couldn't accept charity." "It's not charity," Roy said firmly. "It's employment. Room, board, and fair wages for honest work. Just until you get on your feet or find something better in town." The offer was tempting more than tempting. Emma gurgled in her arms as if offering her own opinion on the matter. "I'll stay a week," Kate finally decided, "to repay your kindness. Then we'll move on to Ash Fork as planned." Roy nodded, though something in his eyes suggested he wasn't convinced she'd leave so soon. "A week it is, then." 1 week turned into 2, then into a month. Spring arrived, painting the surrounding hills with wildflowers. Kate fell into the rhythm of ranch life, helping Mrs. Wilkins with cooking and cleaning while learning the ways of the West that her sheltered upbringing in Pennsylvania hadn't prepared her for. Roy proved to be a fair employer and a kind man. He kept his distance, respectful of her widowhood, but Kate often caught him watching her with Emma, a gentle smile playing at his lips. He would bring wildflowers for the table, claiming Mrs. Wilkins had requested them, though the housekeeper always seemed surprised by the gesture. One evening, as Kate sat on the porch watching the sunset with Emma asleep in her arms, Roy joined her, offering a cup of coffee. "Thank you," she said, accepting it with a small smile. "For everything." "You've earned your keep," he replied. "Mrs. Wilkins says you're a natural with the preserves." Never seen her so pleased with anyone invading her kitchen. Kate laughed softly. She's a good teacher. Patient. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Roy spoke again. You still planning on Ash Fork? The question hung between them. Kate looked down at Emma, then out at the ranch that had become a haven. I'm not sure anymore, she admitted. This place, it feels safe. It is safe, Roy assured her, for as long as you want it to be. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them, something that made Kate's heart beat a little faster. But she looked away, not ready to acknowledge what might be growing in her heart. I should put Emma to bed, she said, rising. Roy stood as well. Of course. Good night, Kate. It was the first time he'd called her by her first name. She liked the way it sounded in his deep voice. Good night, Roy. The following day brought unexpected visitors. Kate was hanging laundry when the sound of approaching horses caught her attention. 3 riders approached the ranch, and from the porch, she saw Roy straighten his posture, his hand instinctively moving to the revolver at his hip. Afternoon, Rafferty, called the lead rider, a heavy-set man with a thick mustache. Been a while. Sheriff Holden, Roy acknowledged, not relaxing his stance. What brings you out this way? The sheriff dismounted, his eyes scanning the property until they landed on Kate. Got word there's a woman staying here. Young with a baby. Kate froze, her heart pounding. Had Jeremiah sent someone looking for her? Roy stepped forward, positioning himself between Kate and the visitors. Mrs. Anderson works for me. Is there a problem? The sheriff pulled out a folded paper. Got a notice from up Prescott Way. Jeremiah Anderson claims his sister-in-law took off with family heirlooms. Says she's unstable after her husband's death, not fit to care for a child. Kate gasped, her legs nearly giving way beneath her. That's a lie. I took nothing but what was mine, Mrs. Wilkins appeared at her side, taking Emma from her trembling arms. Steady now, dear. Roy's face had hardened to stone. Sheriff, I've known Mrs. Anderson for weeks now. She's of sound mind and a devoted mother. Whatever claims her brother-in-law is making are false. The sheriff looked uncomfortable. Just doing my job, Rafferty. Need to at least ask some questions. Roy glanced at Kate, a silent question in his eyes. She nodded, drawing strength from his support. Fine, Roy conceded. But you'll question her here respectfully with Mrs. Wilkins present. And then you'll leave her be. The interrogation was brief but humiliating. Kate had to explain her husband's death, Jeremiah's cruel treatment, and her desperate flight. When asked about the alleged stolen items, she emptied her saddlebags, revealing her modest possessions and Thomas's locket, the only item of value she owned. That locket belonged to Thomas's mother, she explained. He gave it to me on our wedding day. It's all I have left of him. The sheriff examined it briefly before handing it back. Doesn't seem like much of a family fortune. Because there isn't one, Roy interjected. Sounds to me like this Jeremiah is trying to get rid of a responsibility he doesn't want, the baby. Sheriff Holden sighed, tucking his notes away. Look, I've done my duty asking questions. Far as I can see, there's no crime here, but Anderson might come looking himself. Let him, Roy said, his tone dangerous. I'll be happy to discuss his treatment of a grieving widow. After the sheriff departed, Kate collapsed into a chair, shaking with relief and lingering fear. He'll come for Emma, she whispered. He thinks he's entitled to her because she's an Anderson. Roy knelt before her, taking her hands in his. Kate, look at me. When she raised her eyes to his, he continued, No one is taking your daughter from you, not while I have breath in my body. The conviction in his voice was unmistakable. Kate felt tears well up. Why are you doing this? You barely know us. Something shifted in Roy's expression, vulnerability replacing determination. I know enough, he said softly. I know you're brave and strong. I know that little girl is lucky to have you for a mother. And I know that having you both here has made this place feel like a home for the first time since my parents died." Kate's breath caught. She hadn't known Roy was an orphan too in his way. "I don't expect anything from you," he continued, "but I want you to stay, not as an employee, as whatever you want to be." It was the closest thing to a declaration she'd heard from him, and it terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. But the threat of Jeremiah loomed large. "I can't put you in danger," she protested. Roy's mouth quirked into a half-smile. "Mrs. Anderson, I've been handling danger since I was 16 years old. One entitled bully doesn't concern me." That night, Kate made her decision. She would stay, not out of fear or desperation, but because for the first time since Thomas died, she felt the stirring of hope of possibility. But Jeremiah Anderson was not a man easily deterred. 2 weeks later, he arrived at the ranch, accompanied by 2 hired guns. Kate was alone in the house with Emma when they rode up, Roy having left at dawn to help a neighboring rancher with a difficult calving. From the window, Kate recognized her brother-in-law's rigid posture and cold eyes. Fear threatened to paralyze her, but Emma's soft babbling from her cradle steeled Kate's resolve. She hurried to Roy's bedroom and retrieved the rifle he kept there, loading it as he had taught her. By the time Jeremiah pounded on the door, Kate stood ready, the rifle held steady in her hands. "Katherine, open this door immediately," Jeremiah demanded. "Leave us alone, Jeremiah," she called back. "You have no right to Emma or to me." "Don't be ridiculous, girl. You can barely feed yourself, let alone a child. I'm offering the girl a proper upbringing with a family name that means something. Be reasonable." Kate's finger moved to the trigger. "My daughter stays with me. I won't tell you again." One of Jeremiah's men muttered something, and then came the sound of boots on the porch steps, retreating. "This isn't over," Jeremiah called. "I'll get the law involved. We'll see how your cowboy friend feels about harboring a kidnapper." Kate watched from the window as they mounted their horses and rode away. Only when they disappeared from sight did she lower the rifle, her hands shaking violently. She knew Jeremiah well enough to understand this was just the beginning. When Roy returned that evening and learned of Jeremiah's visit, his face darkened with anger and concern. "You should have fired a warning shot," he said, checking the rifle. "Let him know you weren't bluffing." "I was afraid it would scare Emma," Kate admitted. "And I wasn't sure I could actually shoot someone." Roy's expression softened. "Let's hope you never have to find out." He set the rifle aside and took her hands in his. "Kate, there's something I need to tell you, something I should have said before." Her heart quickened. "What is it?" "I wasn't entirely honest about my past," he began, looking uncomfortable. "Before I settled here, I rode with the law for a while. U.S. Marshal Service, mostly chasing outlaws across the territories." Kate stared at him, surprised. "You were a marshal. Why didn't you say anything?" "Left it behind 6 years ago when my parents died and I inherited this place," he explained. "Some memories are best not revisited, but I still have connections, friends in positions that might help us." "Us," Kate repeated softly. Roy's eyes met hers, intense and unwavering. "Yes, us." "Kate, I know it's too soon. I know you're still mourning Thomas, but I care for you, for both of you, more than I thought possible. If you'll let me, I want to help protect you from Jeremiah, legally and permanently." Kate's breath caught. "What are you saying, Roy?" "I'm asking if you might consider becoming my wife," he said, the words rushing out as if he'd been holding them back too long. "Not right away, but someday, when you're ready. It would give Emma the protection of my name, and Jeremiah would have no claim." Tears welled in Kate's eyes. Not tears of sorrow, but of confused wonder. She hadn't expected to feel this way again, this fluttering in her chest, this sense of possibility. "Roy, the sound of approaching horses interrupted her response. Roy moved to the window, his body tensing. "It's Sheriff Holden," he said grimly. "And he's not alone." Kate gathered Emma from her cradle, holding her protectively. "Jeremiah." "No, looks official. Stay inside." Kate watched through the window as Roy met the sheriff and another man on the porch. The conversation appeared tense, with Roy shaking his head firmly several times. Finally, he gestured toward the house and the three men entered. "Mrs. Anderson," Sheriff Holden greeted her, removing his hat. "This is Judge Harmon from the Territorial Court. He'd like to speak with you." The judge, a thin man with spectacles and a serious expression, nodded to her. "Mrs. Anderson, I understand there's a dispute regarding the custody of your child." Kate clutched Emma tighter. "There's no dispute, Your Honor. Emma is my daughter. My husband's brother has no right to her." "In normal circumstances, that would be absolutely correct," the judge agreed. "However, Mr. Jeremiah Anderson has filed a formal petition claiming you are mentally unstable following your husband's death, and thus unfit to care for the child." Roy stepped forward. "That's ridiculous, and you know it, Judge." The judge held up a hand. "I'm not saying I agree with the claim, Mr. Rafferty. I'm simply explaining the legal situation. Mrs. Anderson, without a husband or property of your own, and given your employment situation, the court might be persuaded to consider Mr. Anderson's petition." Kate felt the room spin around her. "You can't take my baby," she whispered. "No one's taking anyone anywhere tonight," the judge assured her. "But there will be a hearing in Prescott next week. You'll need to appear and make your case." After the officials departed, Kate collapsed into tears, the weight of fear and exhaustion finally overwhelming her. Roy held her as she cried. Emma nestled between them. "I can't lose her," Kate sobbed. "She's everything to me." "You won't," Roy promised. "Kate, listen to me." He gently tilted her face up to meet his eyes. "Marry me. Tomorrow. Not someday, not when you're ready, but now. As my wife, you'll have legal standing. The ranch would be your home, providing stability. No judge would take a child from a mother in a stable marriage with a secure home." Kate stared at him, her mind racing. "Roy, marriage is sacred. I can't use you this way." "You wouldn't be using me," he insisted. "I meant what I said before. I care for you deeply. I believe we could build a good life together, a real marriage in time. But even if you never come to feel for me what I feel for you, I would be honored to be Emma's father in name and in truth." The sincerity in his eyes was unmistakable. Kate thought of Thomas, of the love they had shared. He would want her and Emma to be safe, to be happy. "Yes," she whispered finally. "Yes, I'll marry you, Roy Rafferty." The next morning they rode into Ash Fork with Mrs. Wilkins and Emma. The local minister, a friend of Roy's, agreed to perform the ceremony immediately. It was simple and brief, with no guests beyond Mrs. Wilkins, who held Emma and dabbed at her eyes. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Roy hesitated before leaning in to place a gentle, respectful kiss on Kate's lips. It was their first kiss, chaste and brief, yet Kate felt something stir within her, something that both surprised and frightened her with its intensity. "Mrs. Rafferty," Roy said softly as they left the church, testing the name. Kate smiled, adjusting to the sound of it. "It feels strange," she admitted. "Good strange or bad strange," she considered for a moment. "Just new, but not unwelcome." The hearing in Prescott the following week was tense but ultimately decisive. Jeremiah, clearly expecting to face a desperate widow alone, was visibly shocked to see Kate enter the courtroom on Roy's arm, dressed in a new blue dress that Mrs. Wilkins had helped sew, looking every inch the respectable rancher's wife. When Jeremiah presented his case, painting Kate as hysterical and unstable, Roy's testimony about her strength and capability was joined by character witnesses. He'd arranged the minister, the town doctor who'd examined Emma and pronounced her thriving, and even Sheriff Holden, who reluctantly admitted he'd seen no evidence of Kate's alleged instability. "Your Honor," Roy addressed the judge, "my wife is a devoted mother and a partner I'm proud to have by my side. The only instability here is in Mr. Anderson's claims, which I believe are motivated by his desire to control his late brother's estate, meager as it may be." Jeremiah's face flushed with anger. This marriage is clearly a sham arranged to circumvent proper custody. The judge peered at him over his spectacles. "Mr. Anderson, the motivations for marriage are not within this court's purview. Mrs. Rafferty is legally wed, with a stable home and visible means of support. Your petition is denied." The ride back to the ranch was quiet, both Kate and Roy processing the victory and what it meant for their future. Emma slept peacefully in Kate's arms, unaware of how close she'd come to being taken away. "Thank you," Kate finally said as they neared home, "for everything." Roy glanced at her, his expression thoughtful. "You don't need to thank me, Kate. We're family now, family." The word settled around Kate like a warm blanket. It had been so long since she'd truly felt part of one. That night, after putting Emma to bed, Kate found Roy on the porch, gazing at the stars. "May I join you?" she asked hesitantly. "Always," he replied, offering her the second chair. They sat in companionable silence for a while, the night sounds of the desert creating a peaceful backdrop. "Roy," Kate finally began, "I need to ask about expectations, now that we're married." He turned to face her, understanding her meaning immediately. "Kate, I meant what I said. I don't expect anything you're not ready to give. We can take this as slowly as you need." Relief washed over her, followed by a surprising twinge of disappointment. The realization confused her. "It's not that I don't." She struggled to find the right words. "Thomas has been gone nearly a year now. I've mourned him and I'll always love him, but these past months with you—" She trailed off, emotion choking her voice. Roy reached out, taking her hand in his. "I'm not asking to replace what you had with him. I just want the chance to build something new, something that honors the past while looking to the future." Kate squeezed his hand, drawing strength from his touch. "I think I'd like that too." That night, Kate moved her belongings into Roy's room, their room now. Though they did nothing more than sleep side by side, the simple act of sharing space, of feeling his steady presence beside her, brought a comfort Kate hadn't realized she'd been missing. Spring gave way to summer, and with it came new routines. Kate learned the business of ranching alongside Roy, discovering she had a talent for bookkeeping that complemented his practical skills. Emma thrived, growing stronger each day, taking her first wobbling steps across the kitchen floor to delighted applause from all three adults. Gradually, almost imperceptibly, the nature of Kate and Roy's relationship evolved. Small touches lingered longer, conversations stretched deeper into the night, and sometimes Kate would catch Roy watching her with an expression that made her heart race. One evening in late July, a sudden summer storm rolled in, bringing welcome rain to the parched land. After Emma was asleep, Roy suggested they sit on the covered portion of the porch to watch the lightning dance across the distant mountains. "It's beautiful," Kate murmured, mesmerized by nature's display. "Yes, it is," Roy replied, but when she turned, she found him looking not at the storm but at her. Heat rose to her cheeks. "Roy, I'm sorry," he said quickly. "I don't mean to make you uncomfortable." "You don't," she assured him, surprising herself with the truth of it. "It's just, I'm not used to being looked at that way anymore." "What way? Like I'm something precious," she whispered. Roy's eyes softened. "But you are, Kate, you and Emma both." The rain intensified, drowning out all other sounds as they gazed at each other. Kate felt something shift inside her, a wall crumbling, a door opening. "Roy," she said softly, I think I'm ready to be your wife, in every way." Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by a tenderness that took her breath away. Slowly, giving her every chance to change her mind, he leaned forward and kissed her. Unlike their wedding kiss, this one deepened, awakening sensations Kate had thought long buried. Her arms wound around his neck as his hands gently cradled her face. When they finally parted, both were breathless. "Are you sure?" Roy asked, his voice husky. In answer, Kate took his hand and led him inside, to the bedroom they'd shared but not truly shared until now. That night marked a new beginning for them both. Kate discovered that love could grow anew without diminishing what came before, and Roy showed her with every touch that patience and understanding could build a foundation stronger than passion alone. Afterward, as they lay together in the darkness, the sound of rain on the roof creating a cocoon around them, Kate whispered, "I think I'm falling in love with you, Roy Rafferty." His arm tightened around her. "I know I'm already in love with you, Kate Rafferty." The seasons turned, and life at the Rafferty Ranch settled into a rhythm punctuated by moments of joy and challenge. Emma's first birthday was celebrated with a small gathering of neighbors who had become friends. Kate found herself integrated into the community, no longer a stranger but a respected rancher's wife with skills and opinions of her own. Jeremiah made one more attempt to cause trouble, sending a lawyer to contest Thomas's will, but the effort was half-hearted and easily rebuffed. It seemed he had finally accepted that Emma would remain with her mother. As Emma's second birthday approached, Kate realized she'd been feeling unusually tired, with occasional bouts of nausea in the mornings. Mrs. Wilkins noticed too, her knowing eyes following Kate as she rushed outside one morning. "Might be time to see the doctor," the housekeeper suggested when Kate returned, pale but composed. "It's probably just a passing illness," Kate replied, though a suspicion had been growing in her mind. Mrs. Wilkins merely smiled. "If you say so, dear." When Kate finally confided her suspicions to Roy, his face lit up with such joy that any lingering doubt about his feelings for her were forever banished. "A baby," he whispered, placing a gentle hand on her still flat stomach. "Our baby." "You're not worried?" Kate asked. "Running a ranch with two small children won't be easy." Roy laughed, pulling her into an embrace. "Katherine Rafferty, nothing worth having comes easy. And this you, Emma, our growing family is worth everything, Dr. Mitchell confirmed Kate's pregnancy during their next trip to town. "Everything looks healthy," he assured them. "I'd expect a spring arrival, probably April or May." As they left the doctor's office, Roy surprised Kate by leading her to the general store instead of heading directly home. "I have something in mind," he explained cryptically. Inside, he consulted briefly with Mr. Peterson, the proprietor, before returning to Kate with a small wooden box. "What's this?" she asked, curious. "Open it when we get home," Roy replied with an enigmatic smile. That evening, after Emma was asleep, Roy placed the box in Kate's hands. "I should have done this properly the first time," he said, "but circumstances were rushed." Inside the box lay a simple gold band with a small pearl set in the center. "Roy," Kate breathed, touched by the gesture. "I know we're already married," he said, taking the ring from the box, "but I wanted to give you something that wasn't just about necessity or protection. This is about love, Kate, my love for you, which grows stronger every day." Tears spilled down Kate's cheeks as he slipped the ring onto her finger, next to the plain band they'd hastily purchased for their wedding. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Like its owner," he replied, kissing her softly. "And like the life we're building together." The baby, a boy they named Robert Thomas Rafferty, arrived on a clear April morning in 1889. He had Roy's dark hair and Kate's green eyes, and from his first breath, He was adored by his parents and his big sister, who took her role as helper very seriously. "He's so tiny," Emma marveled, peering into the cradle where her brother slept. At 2.5, she was a bright, curious child who had inherited her mother's determination and her stepfather's easy smile. "You were even smaller," Kate told her, smoothing her daughter's auburn curls. "And look how big you've grown." As spring bloomed across the Arizona territory, so too did the Rafferty family flourish. The ranch prospered under Roy's careful management and Kate's shrewd business sense. They added a new room to the house for the children, and Kate started a small vegetable garden that soon became the envy of neighboring ranches. Mrs. Wilkins, though she often threatened to retire, showed no signs of actually doing so, declaring that she had no intention of missing a moment of her children's growth. In truth, she had become more family than employee, a beloved grandmother figure to Emma and little Robbie. One evening, as the family sat on the porch watching the sunset, a tradition they maintained regardless of how busy ranch life became, Roy turned to Kate with an expression that still, after nearly 2 years of marriage, made her heart skip. "Happy?" he asked simply. Kate looked around at the life they'd built together. Emma helping Mrs. Wilkins shell peas, baby Robbie dozing in her arms, the ranch stretching out before them, proof of their hard work and determination. Most of all, she looked at Roy, the man who had found her at her lowest moment and offered not just shelter for a night, but a lifetime of love and security. "More than I ever thought possible," she answered truthfully. Roy's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining with the ease of long familiarity. "You know, sometimes I think about that night you and Emma beside that dying fire. I nearly rode past, thinking you might be one of Johnson's hands camping out. What made you stop?" Kate had never asked this before. Roy considered for a moment. "Something in the way you were holding Emma, like she was the most precious thing in the world. I recognized that kind of love. It was how my mother used to hold me." Kate leaned against his shoulder, gratitude washing over her anew. "Thank God you did stop." "No," Roy said softly, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Thank God you stayed." 5 years later, the Rafferty Ranch had grown into one of the most successful operations in the territory. A third child, Sarah Jane, had joined the family, completing their happiness. Emma, now 7, was the spitting image of her mother with the same quiet strength. 5-year-old Robbie had his father's love of horses and spent every possible moment in the stables. And little Sarah, at 2, was the undisputed princess of the household, wrapping everyone, especially Roy, around her tiny finger. The town of Ash Fork had grown as well, with the railroad bringing new opportunities and residents. Kate had opened a small dress shop in town, operating it 2 days a week with the help of a young assistant. Her designs, practical yet stylish, were popular with the local women who appreciated clothing that accommodated the realities of Western life. Roy had been elected to the town council, his fair-minded approach and reputation for honesty making him a natural leader in the community. He took the responsibility seriously, working to ensure that Ash Fork grew in a way that benefited all its citizens. One autumn evening, as Kate sat at her sewing table finishing a dress for Emma, Roy entered their bedroom with an envelope in hand. "Letter came for you today," he said, placing it beside her work. "From Pennsylvania." Kate looked up in surprise. She rarely received mail from her hometown anymore. "Who would be writing to me?" "Return address says Margaret Sullivan," Roy replied. "Isn't that your cousin?" Kate nodded, picking up the envelope. Margaret had been her closest friend growing up, though they'd lost touch after Kate's marriage to Thomas and subsequent move west. The letter contained surprising news. Margaret's husband had passed away, leaving her with a modest inheritance and a desire to see more of the country before settling down again. "She wants to visit," Kate told Roy after reading the lengthy missive. "Says she's always wondered about life out west." Roy smiled. "We have plenty of room. It would be good for you to reconnect with family." Margaret arrived on the spring train, a fashionable widow whose Eastern attire immediately marked her as a visitor. But beneath the fancy clothes and city manners was the same warm-hearted girl Kate had known, and the two women fell easily back into friendship. "You've built quite a life here," Margaret remarked as they sat in the garden, watching the children play under Mrs. Wilkins's watchful eye. "When I heard you'd remarried so quickly after Thomas, I worried." Kate glanced toward the corral where Roy was teaching Robbie how to properly groom a pony. "It wasn't what I expected," she admitted. "But Roy, he's a good man, the best I've known." Margaret studied her cousin's face. "You love him." "With all my heart," Kate replied without hesitation. "And Thomas?" Margaret asked gently. Kate smiled, touching the locket she still wore on special occasions. "I'll always love him too. He gave me Emma and our time together was precious." But life continued and my heart had room for new love. "I envy you that," Margaret sighed. "Harold and I had a comfortable marriage, but what you have with Roy, that's rare." Kate reached out to squeeze her cousin's hand. "Perhaps you'll find it too someday." Margaret's visit extended from the planned 2 weeks to a full month, and by the time she departed, she'd become part of the family fabric. The children adored their Aunt Maggie, who told wonderful stories of the East and brought them gifts unlike anything available in Ash Fork. "You'll come back?" Kate asked as they stood on the train platform saying their goodbyes. "Wild horses couldn't keep me away," Margaret promised, embracing her cousin. "Though I might come for longer next time. This place has a way of growing on a person." After Margaret's departure, Kate found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this point. From the desperate widow huddled beside a dying fire to the confident woman she'd become: wife, mother, businesswoman, respected member of the community. "Penny for your thoughts," Roy said, finding her standing by the corral one evening, lost in contemplation. Kate smiled up at him. "I was just thinking about how differently things might have turned out if you hadn't ridden by that night." Roy wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "I don't believe that was chance, Kate. Some things are meant to be. Even us," she asked, leaning back against his solid presence. "Especially us," he affirmed. "You and those children are the best things that ever happened to me." From the house came the sound of Emma calling them for dinner. Their eldest daughter had recently taken an interest in cooking and insisted on helping with meals. "We should go in," Kate said, though she made no move to leave Roy's embrace. "In a minute," he replied, turning her to face him. "I just want to look at you first." Kate felt her cheeks warm under his gaze, still affected by him after all these years. "Roy Rafferty, are you flirting with your wife?" "Every chance I get," he answered with a grin, before leaning down to kiss her. The kiss, like their love, had deepened and matured with time, comfortable yet still thrilling, familiar yet never taken for granted. As they walked hand in hand toward the house filled with the sounds of their children's laughter, Kate felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over her. Life had not been without its hardships, but through it all, they had faced each challenge together, their bond strengthening with each passing year. From that fateful night beside a dying fire to this moment of perfect contentment, their story had unfolded in ways neither could have predicted, but both now cherished beyond measure. It was not the life Kate had once envisioned for herself, but standing in the warm glow of the home they'd built together, she knew with absolute certainty that it was the one she was meant to live. "I love you," she whispered as they paused on the porch, the setting sun painting the landscape in hues of gold and amber. Roy's eyes, still as kind and steady as the first night they met, held hers. "And I love you, Katherine Rafferty. Today, tomorrow, and for all the days we have left." With those words hanging in the air between them like a promise, they entered their home, closing the door on the approaching night, but opening it to the countless moments of joy that still awaited them in the life they would continue to build together.